All right, 49ers Intel. We've got plenty to cover today. We're going to talk a lot about strategy because different things happen both with the 49ers and around the league in some unusual ways. We'll put it that way. And we could start with the piece that I wrote yesterday that came out today on The Athletic, which ended up being very relevant to the Stephon Diggs news, which happened today. That was a trade from the Buffalo Bills to the Houston Texans. But this is what I wrote about Brandon Aiyuk. This is what Brandon Aiyuk's potential new contract with the 49ers might look like. So what we have here is analysis of where Brandon Aiyuk is as far as receiving efficiency coming off that 2023 season, and then a straight up contract projection. I actually went through the years and devised the cap hits that came out of the signing bonus and the option bonus that I gave Brandon Aiyuk to see how the 49ers might be able to fit this into a window that allows them to also pay Brock Purdy, and that's probably coming up in 2025. Yes, the 49ers must thread a needle, but also, yes, they can fit Brandon Aiyuk. And that's why both sides have been talking about getting a deal done. That remains the 49ers' priority. That remains the most likely ending to all of this. If anything, then we saw today that Stephon Diggs trade. He's a good receiver, but there were a lot of issues in Buffalo. There were personality issues there. There were attitude issues. He seemed to be throwing the Bills under the bus and Josh Allen under the bus a lot on social media. His brother, Trayvon Diggs, is a cornerback for the Dallas Cowboys, would also mock Buffalo. And basically, Stephon Diggs did not protect his organization. I think the Bills ultimately said this guy thinks that he's bigger than the organization. His production really declined over the back half of last year, and he's 31 years old, so he still should be physically in a position where the production should have kept going. There probably was an issue between him and Josh Allen and just with him within the overall offensive structure last year. So the Bills said, we're going to get out from this contract. Yes, we're going to face a lot of dead money because of it, but dead money, people need to realize that dead money is money that has already been paid for a player. Dead money is a sunk cost. So the Buffalo Bills said this is the suboptimal path, continuing with Stephon Diggs. We are not going to continue with the suboptimal path just because we've already paid a lot of money for it. We're going to continue forward with the optimal path in their minds based on the strayed relationship between Stephon Diggs and the rest of that organization. And for them, the optimal path was an unspectacular trade return, a 2025 second-round pick. They also had to ship away a fifth and a sixth-round pick to Houston, but they got rid of Diggs and they got rid of the money that they owed him, not just this season, but the money that was on schedule to be paid to him in 3 seasons past this one. So they got rid of about $19 million guaranteed this year to Stephon Diggs, and then about $60 million total over the next 3 years. The Texans, meanwhile, were able to acquire Stephon Diggs, a receiver who they believe is going to play better football for them than he did down the stretch in Buffalo last year. The bet from Houston's perspective is that there were personal issues in Buffalo. They said, okay, maybe this guy was acting like a diva in Buffalo, but we believe we have the organizational structure to reignite that fire in him with Houston. And if Houston is right, they're going to get a receiver that's been really damn good at his peak in the NFL, and they're going to get him for about 18 to 19 million a year because Buffalo's handling the signing bonus. And against the cap, the signing and option bonus and all those things, those are the dead money if you trade or release a player before his contract is up. So the Texans are trading for Diggs potentially being back in maybe not his prime, but top 90th percentile receiver if they can get him to work well with CJ Stroud and Nico Collins. And the Buffalo Bills are trading to move away from what had become a suboptimal path for them. Different teams have different needs. Obviously, we see that Houston is trying to optimize the window of the rookie quarterback contract of CJ Stroud. They've got 3 more years of that, but probably only 2 more years of that, really, right? Because if Stroud continues playing the way that he did his rookie year, he's going to want to get paid at the same time that Brock Purdy is going to want to get paid, and that is after this next season. So by really, really focusing on acquiring higher price talent now, the Texans are trying to maximize the window where their quarterback is inexpensive Meanwhile, the Buffalo Bills, well, they can't have suboptimal production on their team. And they can't have, with Josh Allen making as much money as he's making right now, the Buffalo Bills cannot afford not getting full bang for their buck for big time receiving or any big time player. And Stephon Diggs earned a big extension from the Bills. You can fairly say that was a mistake in retrospect. They did get good production out of him, though, over the past few seasons. So, I mean, it really tailed off last year down the stretch. But what the Bills have to do is they have to focus on, where does our team go moving forward? Are we better or worse off with Stephon Diggs moving forward? And if we're worse off with Stephon Diggs moving forward, they decide to part ways with him. And that's what Buffalo did. You can't focus on what this was. You can't focus on how much money you paid him. That's a sunk cost. It's called sunk cost fallacy in business. You can't worry about what you've already poured into something if moving forward it's just going to be generating you bad returns. That's one of the most common and worst business errors you can make. And it's one of the worst business errors you can make because it's so common. It trips so many people up. I think in NFL circles, it trips a lot of people up. It trips a lot of fans up. They're like, oh, wait, the dead money. They can't deal with that dead money. Oh, yes, they can. They have dealt with the dead money. The dead money is money that they've already paid that's just now accelerating to hit the cap because it's spread out over the course of multiple years. I'll show you an example as it relates to this Brandon Aiyuk contract. So this is the contract that I devised up. I recommended the 49ers just take this, copy and paste it, send it over to Ryan Williams, who's Brandon Aiyuk's agent. By the way, Brandon Aiyuk's agent is close with John Lynch. They've known each other for about 2 decades. So I think all the parameters for a good business sojourn are there. A good, business process are there. We'll put it that way. Sojourn, it's more of a break. They don't want to take a break here. They want to continue working at this. But all the parameters, all the pillars for a negotiation that should be productive are there. Ryan Williams on Aiyuk's side and John Lynch and Parag Marathe, obviously, on the 49ers side. But I'm talking about dead money in the terms of Stephon Diggs. How does dead money come to be? Well, the 49ers can theoretically give Brandon Aiyuk a contract that lowers his 2024 cap hit from $14 million to $8 million and keeps his 2025 and 2026 cap hits down at $12.2 million before this gets much more expensive on the cap. They can theoretically do that, all while still paying Brandon Aiyuk a deal that's worth $25.7 million a year. The deal that I have up on the screen right here, potentially for Brandon Aiyuk, is worth $25.7 million a year. Yet the 49ers lower his 2024 cap number and keep his 2025 and 2026 cap numbers low, so they have a window to pay Brock Purdy. You ask me how they do that? Well, they do that by giving Brandon Aiyuk a big signing bonus, $30 million, and they can kick in a guaranteed option bonus in 2025 of $20 million. So he'd just about match Tyreek Hill in fully guaranteed money at the top of the receiver list. If you want to see the receiver list, that's right here. Tyreek Hill's at the top, $30 million per year. He's also at the top of fully guaranteed money, $52.5 million per year. I don't expect Brandon Aiyuk to end up at $30 million a year, but I do expect him to end up in the top 5 here. 25-7 would be in the top 5. It'd be in the top 4 right now to be above A.J. Brown. And I do expect him to be near Tyreek Hill in fully guaranteed money because he's been such a dependable, good player for the 49ers. Anyway, back to this. When you look at the prorated signing bonus and the option bonus, by NFL rule, the cap hits of the signing bonus and the option bonus are spread out over up to 5 years. So you're not paying all $30 million of the signing bonus on the cap, even though Brandon Aiyuk gets $30 million right away, but you're not paying it against the cap right away in its totality. You're only paying $6 million a year because 6 times 5 equals 30. If you give him a $20 million option bonus in 2025, that's only $4 million a year because 4 times 5 equals 20. So like an accordion, you can stretch out the cap hit like an accordion with guaranteed money. Guaranteed money is your friend if the player remains dependable. Aiyuk has only missed 1 game due to injury over the past 3 years, so he's been dependable. Stephon Diggs, I don't think, was dependable enough for Buffalo because Obviously, he was starting to fall off. I'm not talking about injury availability. I'm talking about dependability within the context of the offense. He started to fall off in terms of production over the back half of the 2023 season. And the Bills decided that the bang for the buck wasn't worth it for them. So they had a contract that looked a little bit like this. They had a signing bonus that stretched money out into the future. They decided to bail the contract with 4 years left. And because of that, all the money on Stephon Diggs' contract that's shaded in blue and stretched out like an accordion here accelerated, and the accordion crunched, and it hits the cap now. But it's all money that was going to have to hit the cap at some point anyway, and unused cap space carries over from season to season. So what Buffalo did is basically got off the hook for the non-guaranteed portions, the non-shaded portions of Diggs' deal, which is going to be similar to Aiyuk's deal as far as structure goes. And they freed up that cap space either this season, whether it be the 19 million or 18 million in base salary this season and next seasons and the season after that and the season after that. That all went to Houston. So at the end of the day, Buffalo saves money. They just incur a lot of dead money. But you don't want to keep on wasting money on a suboptimal path. And they determined it was a suboptimal path. You can argue that it wasn't, but Buffalo, who knows a whole lot more about their team, probably thinks that it was. So I think the ultimate or the initial suboptimal move was extending Stephon Diggs, but you live with it. You only can continue to operate with the information that you have now, and you can only move forward into the future. You can't go back into the past and change things. I think that you could draw a comparison to the 49ers and Trey Lance. You give him quite a bit of guaranteed money when you draft him number 3 overall in 2021. But then when it becomes apparent that Brock Purdy is an infinitely better quarterback and Sam Darnold beats out Trey Lance in training camp, and you don't want to pay your third quarterback $10 million guaranteed over the final 2 seasons of his rookie contract, you try to find a trade partner. And the 49ers found a trade partner. Now, Dallas was willing to pay a 4th-round pick. They took the salary of Trey Lance off the 49ers' hands. Is that as much or as valuable as what the 49ers had decided to invest in Trey Lance back in 2021? 3 first-round picks, all that? No, of course it's not as much. But that was a cost in 2021. That's a sunk cost. You're looking at the cost of business right now. You need to think about what makes most business sense moving forward, not what you spent in the past. You cannot succumb to sunk cost fallacy. So the Bills did not succumb to sunk cost fallacy with Stephon Diggs. The 49ers didn't with Trey Lance, if we want to draw that parallel. Anyway, this Brandon Aiyuk contract analysis, it is in the description, or it will be in the description, because I'm going to ask Mike to put it into the description right now, sending it over to him. So we'll get that into the description. You can go and check that out. You can subscribe to The Athletic for much less than what the 49ers are going to have to pay Brandon Aiyuk in this contract. Again, this is probably the only place that you can get an in-depth look at what the contract might look like. My proposal for it, you can look at Aiyuk and the yards per route run behind only Tyreek Hill and Nico Collins last year. Nico's going to pair up with Stephon Diggs in Houston. It's going to be interesting to see that Texans team loading up in the rookie QB contract window with CJ Stroud. So that is that, and we move on to the next piece of news. You guys like these green juices, by the way? I love these green juices. They've got 2 3/4 apples, a third mango, 1/12 pineapple, 1/2 banana, and a third of a kiwi in them. Boost it with spirulina, alfalfa, broccoli, spinach, barley grass, wheatgrass, ginger, parsley, kale, and garlic. I did not get paid to advertise. I just inadvertently advertised. They're called The Goodness Outside. I like them. All right, I'm ready to talk about Brock Wright. Restricted free agent tight end. 49ers gave him an offer sheet after the Lions had only offered him the lowest tender that there was, $2.985 million for 1 season. 49ers said, we want Brock Wright to be our tight end too. He'd actually be an upgrade over Charlie Werner, who signed with the Atlanta Falcons. So the 49ers, as is their right, gave Brock Wright an offer for $12 million over multiple seasons. However, Detroit, under the restricted free agent process, has an opportunity to match within 5 days. And if they do match the 49ers, then they get to keep Brock Wright. Detroit today, a couple hours before the deadline, 1 p.m. Pacific time, decided to match the 49ers offer for Brock Wright. So he will stay with the Lions. The 49ers are still on the market to pick up another tight end. We'll take a look at the roster in just a little bit. And the worst case scenario entering this whole process was that the 49ers would force an NFC rival, maybe their chief NFC rival, to spend a little extra cash on a position where they weren't planning to spend as much cash. That's exactly what happened. So it was the worst case scenario for the 49ers, ended up being a win-win. Either you don't put in an RFA offer to Brock Wright and nothing happens and the Lions pay him $2.985 million, or you do and the Lions do match it, but they have to pay him a greater amount of money. $2.985 million to $12 million. It's a lot more. Now, I don't know if that's going to be $12 million guaranteed. Whatever the 49ers offer sheet was is what the Lions have to give him. So we'll have a chance to see what that contract was as soon as those details get up there on the Over the Cap website. I'm guessing it was a lot like Charlie Warner's contract, which was 3 years, $12 million for the Falcons. And that had about $4.2 million in guaranteed money for Charlie. So the 49ers still looking to replace that. And, you know, I say that it worked for Brock Wright. Without the restricted free agent window here, without the 49ers offering and essentially negotiating a contract for the Lions, Brock Wright is several million poorer right now. So he made a lot of money, and that's how the RFA window is supposed to work. It's supposed to give players a chance to raise their value. If only your team can re-sign you, that's what an exclusive rights free agent is. That means that their rights only belong to that one team, so they can't negotiate with an outside team. A restricted free agent can negotiate with other teams, kind of like Jawan Jennings, although we haven't heard of a bigger offer sheet for him coming in, so he's probably going to remain with the 49ers. So the restricted free agent can actually probe the market to raise his value, to see, okay, fine, somebody else might be able to offer more, and then we'll see if the Lions can match that. And in this case, the Lions did. Now, unrestricted free agency is a whole other step. This is not an unrestricted free agent situation, but if it were, the 49ers could up their offer even more, and then Brock Wright would have a choice to decide between the highest 49ers offer, the highest Lions offer, or the highest offer of any other team that would get in on the bidding. Here, there is no such choice. Here, if the Lions match the highest offer from another team, they get to keep him. That's the difference between restricted free agency and unrestricted free agency. After only 2 service years, you're an exclusive rights free agent. After 3 service years in the NFL, you are a restricted free agent. And then if your contract expires after 4 service years in the NFL, you are an unrestricted free agent. More news for the 49ers today. They have signed a tall new running back, Patrick Taylor Jr., formerly of the Green Bay Packers. So we're going to put this, I've already inserted this onto the roster, but we might as well pop open the roster right now. Take a look at this, show you where exactly Patrick Taylor Jr. is going to fit in with the 49ers. Remember, teal means outside signing during this free agency period. So there's Patrick Taylor Jr. This is a tall running back. He's 6'2". We can go to his spider chart. As you can see, the height is what really stands out. Doesn't have great explosiveness, but a good broad jump. So that suggests there might actually be some explosiveness in a very short area. As far as his 40, relatively average, 46th percentile. But he's got big hands, long arms, and he's tall at 6'2". In college at Memphis, they actually listed Patrick Taylor Jr. as 6'3". He caught about 30 to 40 passes in college, and then he had a best season receiving in the NFL last season for the Packers. 11 catches in fairly limited time, 124 special team snaps. So the reason why the 49ers needed a running back is right here, and I think it's very simple. I mean, if those of you who watch the show know that I dedicated a video saying they're definitely going to add a running back or 2. I think I predicted 2. And I think that second running back, you could still see there might be room for him because they've carried 4 running backs on the 53 in the past. I should denote that Patrick Taylor Jr. is a running back. They've carried 4 in the past. So right now they only have 4. If they want to carry 4, they're going to need more to have some practice squad insulation. They've got Christian McCaffrey under contract for 2 more seasons. They've got Elijah Mitchell under contract for only this 2024 season. Then he's scheduled to be an unrestricted free agent. They've got Jordan Mason, who's going to be a restricted free agent next offseason. So Taylor can slot in there as number 4 with 124 special team snaps last season. I think that he has the potential to deliver in that phase of the game, kind of like guys like Yetur Gross-Matos, Ezekiel Turner, and Chase Lucas, all defensive signings for the 49ers. But you have to bolster that running back room. And Taylor, the tall running back, fits in there. Maybe he doesn't make the team. Maybe they bring in an undrafted free agent or a lower round rookie running back to really push the matter here in the draft. And if that happens, well, it's going to be a fight for that final spot. But we've seen the 49ers go through a lot of running back injury issues over the years. And we know why they like to carry 4 on the 53. It's to insulate themselves from that. And they've liked to have guys stashed on that practice squad beyond the 4 on the 53. And they currently still have a little bit more room. If you're interested in Patrick Taylor and watching more of his game, go watch his highlights against the Lions this year. I believe that was the Thanksgiving Day game for the Green Bay Packers. Really, really impressive running from Patrick Taylor. He had one beast mode run toward the end zone there near the goal line where he was fighting through contact. Again, explosion, it's about average as you saw in the metrics, but the height and the pass catching ability, especially the ability to develop some of what he does as a route runner with his hands in an offense like the 49ers, where they're counting on that type of adaptability, where you can't just yank Christian McCaffrey off the field and then not have somebody with good hands come onto the field because it will completely compromise the threat of your offense. I think the potential that Patrick Taylor Jr. has shown in that regard with his hands has been important. One other piece of news, this was more recent. Randy Gregory, who spent about half a season, a little bit more than that with the 49ers, he signed with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And no, this will not count into the compensatory formula for the 49ers. The reason why is because when they traded with Denver for Gregory this past season, the 49ers actually cut off 3 years at the end of Randy Gregory's contract. None of the money was guaranteed, but they told Randy, hey, we want you to hit unrestricted free agency. We don't want to have to cut you at the end of the season. It was a gentleman's agreement. Both sides were okay with it because none of the money was guaranteed. Gregory wasn't going to play at 14 or 15 million, which was his number for 2024. That wasn't going to happen for a player past his prime. So they actually shortened the length of Randy Gregory's contract that they inherited in that trade, which means that they will not be eligible to use Gregory's name in the compensatory formula for 2025. Some people had that mistaken. Randy Gregory, no, he will not fetch any compensatory value. I thought that he was okay for the 49ers. Obviously, an aging player, a rotational guy. I think that if you look at what the 49ers have done as far as rebuilding their defensive line this year, they've gotten better. I mean, Randy Gregory was in one of those auxiliary spots. Somebody like Drake Jackson or Robert Beal Jr. will probably have to take it this year, but Yetur Gross-Matos has taken one of the defensive end spots. That's a younger upgrade over what the 49ers had last year. You could say Yetur Gross-Matos has taken Drake Jackson's spot. Jackson got hurt, so it's complicated when you're talking about who had responsibility where. But Jackson probably, when he's healthy, he's going to be battling with Robert Beal for that final defensive end spot. You want those two young guys going at it. And, you know, they have Leonard Floyd now, too. Leonard Floyd essentially takes the Chase Young spot. So there's marginal improvements for the 49ers across the board with their trade acquisition and Leonard and Malik Collins, and with their free agent signings in Elliott Floyd and Yetur Gross-Matos. You know, the only place where the ceiling probably isn't the same is Collins with Eric Armstead, right? Armstead has a really high ceiling, but they've raised the floor significantly with Malik Collins just because Eric Armstead missed 13 games over the past 2 seasons with injuries. The 49ers have been going for durability in essentially every one of their signings so far. All right, it's time for 49ers Q&A. Green juice at work. I appreciate you up, Anthony, or no, sorry. I appreciate you, Antonio. And I appreciate you, Ross. Thank you, guys. Mike says, post your questions. I'd recommend that you listen to him. No, the 49ers are not in cap hell. 49ers media doesn't know what they're talking about, especially about the salary cap. I'll give a shout out to Jason Hurley. He knows what he's talking about. He's great with the cap online. I think 49erscap.com. You could tell him that I sent you. And I know that I know what I'm talking about because I actually track this stuff. And I actually write about this stuff. And I actually take the time to learn it. I'm not lazy, but there's a lot of lazy takes out there. And to prove that I track this stuff, here's my salary cap worksheet. 49ers, I'm going to have to add the Patrick Taylor Jr. signing. And obviously not adding a tight end signing right now because they didn't get their target from Brock Wright from the Detroit Lions, but they're going to be working with $28.4 million later this year for this 2024 season. And if they carry that money over, you add 28 million to the 22.3 open next year. I mean, that's 50 million in space for next season to work with. That's before restructures next season. This team is far from cap hell. They've managed this quite well. So don't listen to uninformed sources. There's probably, I mean, again, we'll say there's two. There's two that know how to deal with the cap well with the 49ers. Jason Hurley, and you can come here for more good cap information. All right, let's get on with the questions. I'm ready. When did the 49ers start the offseason program? They began on April 15th. They've begun the offseason program. They've begun phase 1, which are voluntary workouts. So Brandon Aiyuk has been in the building during phase 1. Guys have been in the building. Phase 2, though, is when players can start doing some work with coaches, and that is April 15th. This week, the 49ers the front office is conducting its draft meetings. Draft meetings have started this week. The draft is at the end of this month, April 20-something. That's after phase 2 begins. And then after the draft, you're going to have the rookie minicamp. And after the rookie minicamp, you'll have phase 3, which is OTAs, which is actual practices happening, albeit without pads on the football field. Will John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan move up day one? They might. It's all going to be a game time decision. You have to be calculating where you could benefit by moving up, who you might be able to grab, what other teams are doing. It really is pointless to speculate too far into it right now because we're still about a month away from the draft. But I do think that they've got a crowded roster. And I do think that trading up like they did the last time they had pick number 31 like they do this year was 2020, and they traded up. They traded up from 31 to 25. And it cost them pick number 31, and it cost them a 4th rounder and a 5th rounder to do so. And they drafted Brandon Aiyuk fittingly with that pick. So might they do the same? Very possibly. We'll see. Do I have a list of the guys on top 30 visits? You bet that I do. And I think that I might be a couple guys behind, but there you go. Jamal Hill out of Oregon, Marshawn Nealand, the edge rusher from Western Michigan, Shao Smith-Wade, the corner from Washington State, Sione Vaki, safety from Utah, Malachi Corley, the receiver from Western Kentucky, Jerry Rice's son, Brendan Rice, USC, Brandon Dorless, interesting, very fast defensive lineman out of Oregon, who I think Might be an interior guy, a speedy interior guy. And then Javon Baker, the receiver out of UCF. If I'm missing anybody, Mike, let me know. I think that I might be one or two names behind, but hopefully that answers your question. Luke McCaffrey, I think he might be the most probable legacy draftee for the 49ers. Thoughts on this analogy? And this sounds a little bit like the analogy I always use. I use the sink. The salary cap is a boat. Each year you can only carry contracts and players to the cap. If you're over, you have to jettison players because you can't let the boat sink. Yeah, I think in very rudimentary terms that's true, but then you could restructure and push money into future years. I see the salary cap as a series of sinks. They can't overflow. And there's a drain to the sink that allows you to manage overflow. But the drain is either connected to the ocean where it could just flow away indefinitely, or it's connected to next year's sink. If you restructure a contract, you are pushing water from this year's sink. You're letting it flow into future year's sinks. But if you're cutting a player, then that means, and money that was previously on the books but isn't guaranteed to them, you're letting go of that money. You're freeing yourself of that obligation. It is draining out to the ocean. So I view the salary cap a little bit like you do, Lance, but I also view it, maybe a little bit more intricately as a series of interconnected sinks. And the 49ers, well, their sink right now for the 2024 season has that's 2025, has $28.4 million in space. And then for 2025, $22.3 million in space. But whatever they don't end up using here in 2024 is going to flow over into 2025. Or actually, the empty space will flow over. So the sink will become bigger in 2025. Their cap size this year in 2024 is $296.6 million. Right now, I have the 2025 cap predicted to be $280 million. We won't know that number for another year or so, but the adjusted cap is dependent on how much open space you carry over from season to season. No, Patrick Taylor is not a Jalen Hurd alternative. Patrick Taylor is a depth running back, special teams capabilities, could maybe continue to work his way up the pecking order, did some nice things for Green Bay last year. But the 49ers needed a depth signing at running back that could play some special teams, and they got that through Patrick Taylor Jr. I don't think there's anything particularly wrong with the Brandon Aiyuk situation. That's another thing that the media has falsely sold you on, or at least places that don't really accurately report what the 49ers are doing. Brandon Aiyuk has literally said, hopefully the professionals on my side and the professionals on the 49ers side reach an agreement. And the 49ers have said that they are also working toward an agreement because they want to keep Brandon Aiyuk around for a while. Aiyuk has been working out in the building, according to what we heard from, I think Brandon Aiyuk himself said when he was in the building the other day. Either him or John Lynch said it, but he's been in the building. He's still under contract for 2024. He's trying to negotiate a pay raise, or his representation is. We know that Ryan Williams, Brandon Aiyuk's agent, is close with John Lynch. So, I mean, you put all those things together and everything's in place for a nice, good, productive negotiation. Now, will the negotiation happen overnight? Probably not. Typically, you need some deadline pressure to get these things done because, yes, Brandon Aiyuk could be asking for significantly more than the 49ers are willing to give. And the 49ers, like any good business, you can't just go out there and offer a blank check. You got to play hardball so you could stay salary cap compliant when you've got so many other big expenditures on the team. But ultimately, as the deadline comes closer and it becomes worth it for the team to maybe up its price a little bit because they don't want Aiyuk missing time in training camp, this and that. They want to make sure the vibes are good. As time gets closer to the season, it might make sense for the two sides to come closer together. Fred Warner's deal in 2021 got done on July 21st. Deebo Samuel's deal in 2022 got done, I think, on July 31st, 2 or 3 days into training camp. And that was after he had requested a trade. George Kittle's deal got done right before training camp in 2020. Nick Bosa didn't get done until early September last year. So I don't think it's ideal for something to drag on as long as the Nick Bosa situation did. And I don't think that Brandon Aiyuk has quite as much leverage as Nick Bosa. I would think that the 49ers would want to get this one wrapped up sooner. But the standard timeline for these has been later in the offseason. So I don't think anything is wrong if it's not done yet. It's just the nature of business. It's the nature of negotiations. And if both sides are operating in good faith, which I think the 49ers have shown that they operate in good faith in these contract negotiations, then Brandon Aiyuk can go ahead and continue working out with the 49ers. This is an employee who has been doing great work for the organization, who deserves a pay raise, who's negotiating a pay raise, but he's still under contract. Why can't he keep on coming to work? Why can't he work out at the facility? I don't think there's anything weird about that. I think it's a sign that things are going better than they did with Deebo Samuel, who obviously wasn't working out at the team facility until the mandatory mini camp. Nick Bosa always worked out away from the facility, so there was nothing to read into that. We knew that they were negotiating last offseason, but he wasn't around. So in the case of Brandon Aiyuk right now, and I think Bosa showed up during the mandatory minicamp because you have to. But so, we'll see if Brandon Aiyuk shows up to the voluntary OTA stuff or if he doesn't. But end of the day, it's the same process that we've seen 4 years in a row. 49ers are 4 out of 4. I'd fully expect them to move to 5 out of 5. But why would they trade Aiyuk for Surtain? That doesn't make sense. If you think the 49ers window is 2024, why would you get rid of your most prolific receiver? I mean, you'd just be patching up one hole that you think the 49ers have at cornerback. I get it. You think that they need a top corner, but then you'd be opening up another hole. It'd be like a game of whack-a-mole, right? You'd swat one down and then another one would pop up. You'd lose Brock Purdy's main target. Doesn't really make sense, Aiyuk for Surtain. Plus, you wouldn't really be shedding salary at that point. I mean, yeah, no, that's not feasible. I don't understand. I don't understand the compulsion to want to trade Brandon Aiyuk when he's under contract. He's an extremely, extremely high performer. I mean, look at this. This is part of my piece. This is that Judah Fort Gang chart. He does such a great job with these XY graphs. Get this up on there. So the raw separation grade is on the X-axis, and the catch point and yak grade is on the Y-axis. So you want to be further to the right and further up, and look where Aiyuk was. I mean, this is a superstar. Let's be honest with ourselves. We're dealing with a superstar. The 49ers are dealing with a superstar. This is the kind of player that you want to pay. Stuff like this, combined with stuff like this, the receiving efficiency, not only shows you how good Brandon Aiyuk is, but what it does is it shows you how well he pairs with Brock Purdy. And that's like the operative thing that's going on right now, right? The 49ers want a quarterback that pairs with Brock Purdy because they're planning to pay Brock Purdy next offseason. So they want this receiver who, on-field chemistry, trust, timing, route running, all those things are vital to a quarterback's success. It's a team sport. So why would you be thinking about paying Brock Purdy, but then jettison without a plan to replace his favorite weapon? This was the number one pass offense in football last season. Again, I could put this data up on the screen. I can't put this up enough, in fact. Look where Aiyuk is. He's an outlier. He's in the top right. Look where Aiyuk is in terms of yards per route run, 3.01. I mean, he had 101 targets, and over 1,300 yards. It took CeeDee Lamb about 80 more targets just to get 400 more yards. It's not very efficient there. Much more efficient for Brandon Aiyuk. And Lamb was still in the top 5 in yards per route run. So this not only speaks to Aiyuk, this speaks to Purdy, this speaks to the 49ers offense, this speaks to the fit that they have with Brandon Aiyuk. They're getting elite level production. And I haven't even mentioned the blocking yet. Really good run blocking from Brandon Aiyuk. Really good run blocking from Jawan Jennings. If you've got the number 1 offense in football, you don't mess with it. You try to rebuild as much of that offense. You try to keep that restocked to the greatest extent possible over the offseason. And that's what they've done. That's why you don't see a lot of free agent additions in the top half. You see more gray in the top half. Those are re-signings. They brought back Brandon Allen, QB3, Chris Conley, receiver room, Ben Barch, backup guard, brought back a starter in John Feliciano. A couple of re-signings on defense, Kevin Givens and Demetrius Flanagan-Foles. We have Patrick Taylor Jr., today's running back signing in there now. And because we took off the tight end, Brock Wright, we see that the 49ers have stayed at 73 90-man spots taken. So they have 17 spots left. They currently own 10 draft picks. And moving forward, we will see what happens. I'm ready for some more questions. Let's go. And here's another thing with Aiyuk, and I wrote about this in the piece. I'll get the piece back up there. Where is it here? Oh, it's right here. Give me 1 second. Let's get this back up on the screen for you. So you can check this out. It's going to be in that description. Mike has put it there. There's a certain amount of leverage the 49ers have. And I mean, players don't like this, but it's the way that the collective bargaining agreement is set up. The 49ers can let Brandon Aiyuk play on the 5th-year option this year, $14.1 million. Then they could theoretically franchise tag him if they don't reach an agreement for 2025. That's this year's tag for receivers is at about $22 million. Be marginally higher next year. Depends on the salary cap. And then the 3rd year or the 2nd year franchise tag or the 3rd year of this potential arrangement would cost 120% of the first franchise tag, so like 26 or 27 million. You can keep Brandon Aiyuk around for 3 years at about 21 million per year at most, maybe 22 million per year through a series of 1-year deals. That's at least some leverage on the 49ers part. It's at least some leverage, but they also don't want to go down that path because they'd rather do what I discuss in this article. They'd rather, instead of dealing with 1-year contracts, which would condense all of the cap hit of a contract to 1 season, they would rather stretch out the cap damage like I do with the blue and the green with the signing bonus and the option bonus here. So actually a long-term deal with guaranteed money makes more sense for both the 49ers and also for Aiyuk. So yes, they have a nuclear option, but I don't know if they want to use it. I know they don't want to use it. They'd rather extend Brandon Aiyuk, but that nuclear option represents some sort of leverage for the 49ers. This is exactly it. The 49ers would like to avoid going down the franchise tag rabbit hole. The Irish kickers to compete with Jake Moody. Now, that's a cool thought. It won't happen. I mean, Jake Moody had a good rookie year. He made a big kick there in the Super Bowl, 50-plus yards. He was a top half kicker in his rookie season. They obviously invested that 3rd-round pick in him. I think they expect him to be better, especially after he made some nails, big, long kicks down the stretch run. I'll keep an eye on your Irish kickers, but I do think the 49ers are set with Jake Moody. We got some Moody fans. Yeah, I don't see any reason for concern with Jake Moody. That was really, really overblown. Again, he was a top 12 guy last year, percentage wise. He was in that top half of the league as a rookie, and I think that's all you can ask for from the 49ers. When do I expect Dre Greenlaw back? Well, I expect him to start the season on PUP based on what John Lynch said at the owners' meetings last week. Beyond that, I don't know. So we'll just have to wait and see. That's why they have Devondre Campbell on the team now. We've got a thought. Use the franchise tag next year on Charvarius Ward if they can't reach a deal. Well, the Chiefs used it on L'Jarius Sneed this year, and then they traded him to get some value there. So if Ward's an all-pro again, that is a path the 49ers might take. And you can only use one franchise tag a season, right? In all likelihood, I've already covered this. This Aiyuk situation is publicly ahead of the Warner, the Kittle, and the Debo, and the Nick Bosa situations. It's publicly ahead of where those situations were in April. At this time in 2022, 2 years ago, maybe it was a week after this, but it was close to this time, Debo Samuel requested a trade. He wanted to put the 49ers' feet to the fire ahead of the NFL draft. It didn't work. They kept him, and they saw through it. But Brandon Aiyuk doesn't seem to be close to requesting a trade. And even if he does, then we could just revert back to 2 years ago, and it's the same dynamics. If the 49ers find a king's ransom for Brandon Aiyuk, fine, they could trade him. But he's under contract with them, and they control how this ends. They hold the cards here. They might sweat a little bit. They might not like the social media comments about them over the time that they keep him, but they'll ultimately be in position to pay him. And if the 49ers want to do that, and if Brandon Aiyuk wants to stay with the 49ers, which I think Debo Samuel wanted to stay with the 49ers, even though they requested the trade. I think that was just a mechanism to try to negotiate. But if both sides want to come to the negotiating table, and Aiyuk's side will have to come to the negotiating table, they're already there. But if both sides want to, then generally, especially if the representation gets along with the team, as Ryan Williams is friends with John Lynch, generally deals get done under those parameters. You think that Brandon Aiyuk should get a no trade clause and as much guaranteed money as possible, even if it means slightly less money. And I think, that could work for the 49ers to fit under the salary cap because, again, signing bonus money and guaranteed option bonus money, which is fully guaranteed money, is prorated for salary cap purposes. So you can stretch it out like that accordion over the course of the contract. And if that's the case, then that actually helps you fit more in the shorter term. You can lower Brandon Aiyuk's cap hit by giving him a big extension with a lot of guaranteed money through this mechanism to $8.1 million. Free up $6 million more this year. You can carry it over to next year. You can do whatever you want. Anyway, you can check it all out here. Articles up on The Athletic. I think you guys should go read it. Worked hard on it. Click on it in the description. Sign up. I see a lot of the comments. You're saying that this is the only place that's talking reasonable 49ers news, and I would have to agree. So it'll be good. We'll have Guy Haberman tomorrow. We're doing a little co-show. That's going to be fun. He also does an awesome job recovering from that vocal cord surgery. So we'll see how he is tomorrow morning. So stay tuned for that. Stay tuned for a little bit more today. A lot of good 49ers intel. We will talk to you guys very soon.